Hi there, we are back. Welcome along to Transfer Talk. The very latest on Tottenham's potential new midfielder is on the way for you. Remember, get involved. You can tweet the show at Sky Sports News. Use that hashtag Transfer Talk. And there's plenty of other ways to get involved as well. Yeah, welcome along to Transfer Talk. And we're starting this hour in a very similar way to Good Morning Transfers as things are moving along with Gedson Fernandes and that potential move to Tottenham rather than West Ham. And Mark, bring us up to speed. What's the latest with this one?
It wouldn't be a transfer window in January or a transfer show without talking about this man, Gedson Fernandes. He has been the talking point for every single football fan in and around the Premier League, and he's dipped from one direction to another, and it seems now that Tottenham is his likely destination. Let's just bring us up to date on what's happening. Tottenham have offered a loan deal, an 18-month loan deal with an option to buy for €65 million. It's thought that Benfica have agreed to this one because the Tottenham loan fee is the biggest of all the football clubs that they've been in dialogue with. He's on his way to London, that's what we do know, and he's expected at the Tottenham Hotspur training ground at some stage today, so this deal is progressing.
And Keith, we spoke a lot on Good Morning Transfers about this player and the saga that it had become, and it's looking like he's chosen Tottenham. If you can, very briefly, for those that are not up to speed, just explain a little bit, briefly, please, just what's happened in terms of these twists and turns with the other clubs.
Obviously I tried to do that earlier. It took half of the programme, didn't it? It has been protracted, to say the least. It's been a three-way tug-of-war, hasn't it, between the three London clubs. The first interest came from West Ham at the start of the month, who offered an 18-month loan with an obligation to buy. Then in came Chelsea. We thought, oh, here we go, you might go there instead. They had a differently structured loan. Their agreement with their obligation to buy was higher, set at £55 million. West Ham then revised their offer and thought, to all intents and purposes, that they had their man until Spurs came in and Jose Mourinho came in for his compatriot with an 11th hour swoop. They look, as Mark says, to have got their man, and that one could be wrapped up by the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly a man in demand. Anton, an exciting prospect for the Premier League?
Yes, but based on a very small sample of games. We're talking about a player that's only started 13 league games in the last 18 months. And yeah, right, he's 21 and he's a full international for Portugal. So he's clearly got something. He's very technical. He's a deep line playmaker. He shoots from distance. He spreads the ball wide. He goes out wide quite often himself. But again, you're talking about a player that hasn't actually played that much, and a player with a buyout clause of more than 100 million, and yet, Tottenham are potentially getting him for half that price, around £56 million. A player that's fallen out with his coach at Benfica. A lot of question marks around this as well. I'm not necessarily as excited as I would be, considering there are a lot of question marks around why he's in this position and why he's been allowed to talk to so many clubs.
Yeah, and I guess those question marks come because he's a player that Tottenham fans would want to see hit the ground running, because obviously he's been brought in, I think, as a short-term replacement perhaps for the injuries to Sissoko. Addy, I mean, do you think that this is a wise move for Mourinho?
I almost feel like his hands are tied behind his back in terms of what else he can do. Tottenham don't look like they're going to give him much money to spend in this January transfer window. He clearly needs players. He probably played Eriksen the other day just to kind of show them, look, this is what I've got. And then he bring on Lo Celso and Lamela. He's lacking bodies in that midfield department. And look, it's an option to buy. It's not an obligation. We're hearing before with Chelsea and West Ham as an obligation to buy. This is an option to buy now, so it's slightly different. So it's almost like a free trial, if you like, for an 18 months. See what he can do, and if it works out, you buy him. If it doesn't, you can send him back. So I think it's almost an option that they had to take, and I think it's one that's smart business for Tottenham.
They just need bodies in before it's too late, don't they?
Yeah.
They need to get midfielders in, especially even with Harry Kane's injury as well. You're seeing some of the midfielders having to play a more attacking role, which makes them even more thinner in the centre of the pitch. So they just need to get bodies in, and this is obviously a player that Mourinho knows. Yeah,
Tottenham fans, let us know what you think. Use that hashtag Transfer Talk. But Mark McAdam, time to bring us up to speed with the state of play now.
Arsenal defender Konstantinos Mavropanos is having a medical with German second division club FC Nuremberg today ahead of a potential loan move. Sporting Lisbon boss Silas has admitted he can't guarantee Bruno Fernandes will be available to face Benfica next week amid links to Manchester United. Watford are in talks to sign Udinese forward Ignacio Paceto on a permanent deal, and LA Galaxy are in talks to sign Javier Hernandez. The MLS club have agreed a fee of around £7 million with Sevilla for the 31-year-old. Inter Milan are close to an agreement with Chelsea over a deal for Olivier Giroud. Peterborough have accepted a bid from Charlton Athletic for forward Marcus Maddison. And finally, Pepe Reina will have a medical at Aston Villa today ahead of completing a loan move from AC Milan.
Right, let's get to Newcastle now. Manager Steve Bruce is up against it at the moment with those injuries, more injury woes this weekend. Well, he's been discussing transfers this morning, and this is what he's had to say.
Well, I'm meeting up with the owner in the next couple of days. That's planned. So, as I've said all along, if there's something that can really make us better and they're available, then we'll try and ask something. And I'll ask the owner, of course, who was very supportive in the summer. So let's see what we can get. But I've said all along, I won't just bring players in for the sake of it. You know, most of the injuries we've picked up are minor, so they will be back in 2-3 weeks. And you know, I'm not one for just bringing in players for the sake of it. They've got to be improvers, and if that can happen, then I'll have that conversation with the owner over the next couple of days.
So Keith, interesting him talking about meeting up with Ashley, and it does seem that he will need the backing in this window. He says he won't bring in players for the sake of it, but it seems like he needs to bring in some players.
Yeah, manager meets owner, shocker. Like, we're talking about that as if it's a big story, but with Newcastle, it is, because Mike Ashley is in large absent. He's very rarely there. In fact, I think Steve Bruce, if I'm right in saying, has actually only met him once, and that was on the day Joe Linton arrived. Club record 40 million transfer. He flew into the training ground at the time, Mike Ashley, by helicopter, met Steve Bruce, had a chat with him. So yeah, interesting to hear the fact that they'll be meeting in a couple of days, as Steve Bruce has outlined there, and that just kind of indicates to me that he is probably looking to try and do something. We spoke earlier about the long length of injuries, 11 before the weekend, a couple more, and Dummett and Gale added to that, struggling to put a team out tomorrow night in the FA Cup replay, and an FA Cup where they've actually got a chance of doing well in, because they've actually got a very favourable draw. So I do think Steve Bruce wants to add, but he's been at pains to say, and he said it there in his clip, you heard him, that he will not bring players in for the sake of it. But really, it's got to that stage where they're so low in numbers, you get the feeling they're going to have to bring one or two in. But allied to that is the fact that most of the injuries they've got are soft tissue injuries, so some of them will only be, or most of them, only missing for 2 or 3 weeks. So what you don't want to do is load the team up and then you've got unhappy players. So he's in a really difficult situation, and obviously needs to speak to the owner about it.
Because I guess, 2 or 3 weeks actually can be a long time in the world of the Premier League, because if you get a few bad results, you can be drawn
4 or 5 games possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but there are a lot of teams struggling. A lot of teams on a poor run of form in the Premier League at the moment, so I can understand why Steve Bruce isn't particularly panicking. But I think creatively, they haven't won in 4. They've lost 3 of those games. Obviously, they did well to get a draw at Wolves at Molineux.
That was an important point.
It was an important point.
The rot.
But it was interesting how they played, because they completely changed how they played in the second half after losing to Dwight Gale and moving Joe Linton as the centre forward, because the creativity stopped and Almiron effectively was used to just track back and just do a job on Traore. That's not going to win games. They need to find some more creative players if they can't get Sam Maximin back soon, because at the moment it's fine, they can set up to defend, but you need to win games to stay in the Premier League. It's that simple.
I think St Maximin will be back for Chelsea at the weekend, but I think the biggest problem right now for Steve Bruce is a striker, and I said it last week, he's desperate for added firepower. As you can see, Joe Linton really struggled, 1 goal since his arrival. He needs to be taken out, he needs to be given a rest, but he can't at the moment, so there's so much pressure on his shoulders. Andy Carroll can't play every game, so they really are in a desperate situation up front. But as you say, they're not the only club. No. You would actually probably rather be Newcastle than Aston Villa right now. Yeah. In terms of striking options.
And actually, that's what I was going to ask you, because is that Steve Bruce's priority then, going for a striker? Because it actually seems like they've lost players from across the whole team in every position.
I think that's where it's most serious at the moment. They've obviously lost quite a few defenders as well, but the striking situation is imperative for him. Interestingly, we were reporting last week that they had an interest in Ademola Lookman of RB Leipzig, and they'd made an inquiry there. Steve Bruce indicated at his news conference on Friday that they're a long way off any sort of agreement, even though we get the impression the player would be keen to go. But again, that's a winger, it's not a striker. So, their chase seems to have gone cold at the moment in terms of bringing in a striker. Maybe once he meets with Mike Ashley in the next couple of days, maybe things will move on and Mike Ashley, might give him some money to go out and buy someone. Because at this moment in time, they could easily get dragged back into the relegation mire.
Strikers aren't cheap, though, are they? We saw that with Joe Linton. They spent the best part of £40 million on him. Strikers are not cheap. That's a difficult conversation to have with an owner.
Yeah, definitely. Newcastle fans, let us know what you think. Where would your priority lie at Sky Sports News? # Transfer Talk. Plenty still to come here on Transfer Talk. Should Raul Jimenez stay or go from Wolves this January? We'll be live to Tottenham as well as they close in on that signing of Gedson Fernandes. Stay with us. Welcome back. Gedson Fernandes is in London where he is finalising his move from Benfica to Tottenham. We can get the very latest now on this deal. We can head to Jamie Weir, who is at the club's training ground in Enfield for us. And Jamie, any sign of Fernandes down there this morning? And just explain to us a little bit more about how this deal breaks down.
Well, we haven't spotted him yet, Joe, but there are a couple of different entrances into this vast training ground, so it may well be that Gedson Fernandes is here now. But as Mark was saying, we do expect him here at some point today for his medical, ahead of completing an 18-month loan deal with an option, not an obligation, to buy at the end of that for 65 million euros. That's around 56 million pounds in today's money. Who knows what that's going to be 18 months down the line, but let's not go into that side of things. But it's a deal that really makes a lot of sense for both parties. Why? Well, let's start from the Spurs point of view. It's a reactive signing to Mr. Sissoko being out for the next 3 months. He's a very similar sort of player, a versatile midfielder. He gives you options left, middle and right. He's not the defensive midfielder that many Spurs fans are crying out for at the moment, but he is a body and he is an option for Jose Mourinho. Against Liverpool on Saturday, Harry Winks kind of played in a one-man midfield, and apart from Harry Winks, the only fit midfielders Jose Mourinho has at the moment are Eric Dyer, Victor Wanyama and Oliver Skipp. And Wanyama and Skipp, he's shown that he doesn't really have much faith in those two players at the moment. Tanguy Ndombele, their best midfielder, is injury prone. It's a frustration for Jose Mourinho that he can't stay fit, and as I said, Moussa Sissoko is out until April, so he is another midfielder for Spurs. Why does it make sense for Benfica? Well, they had three options available to them. The first came from West Ham United. It started out as a loan offer with an obligation to buy for million euros. At the end of that, it changed into an out-and-out loan deal. Then an offer came from Chelsea. The option on the table for them was an 18-month loan deal with an option to buy for a similar sort of price, 65 million euros at the end. But importantly, the caveat there was that Fernandes would have had to play 50% of Chelsea's games for that to then kick in. This was the deal that made most sense for them, this 18-month loan deal with an option to buy at the end for 65 million euros. Because if he's a roaring success here at Spurs, yes, it may well be that Spurs will shell out the 65 million euros for him 18 months down the line. If they don't want to, then he returns to Benfica with his market value enhanced. And if he's a complete flop, then he returns to Benfica and they start the process all over again. So it makes sense for both parties. It's another midfielder in the door for Jose Mourinho, but it won't stop the questions from Spurs fans. Where's the defensive midfielder? Where's a right back? And most importantly of the lot, where's a striker?
Yeah, Jamie, absolutely. Thank you very much for bringing us up to speed on that one. Right, guys, one of our favourite times of the day is upon us. It is time for Stay or Go, so get your boards at the ready. Today, we're going to focus on the Wolves striker, Raul Jimenez. Remember, he became Wolves' record signing when he made that switch to Molineux permanent last April, having initially joined on loan. He has hinted that it's perhaps not his long-term future to stay at Wolves. Manchester United interested in the player, so should he stay? Should he go? Cast your votes now. Let us know what you think. Right, what have we got? Oh, a bit of a split, but 3 goals, 1 stay.
Oh,
so
no.
Anton, next time I'm going to have to come straight to you. Why should he stay at Wolves?
I don't think I'd be welcome back at Molineux if I said go, would I? But look, I just think, all right, fair enough, Wolves are stuttering a little at the moment, but there is a project there, and I don't think you can say that about Manchester United. I think if there is interest, Wolves have money in their pockets. If he wants one big contract again, he may well get that with Wolves. He doesn't necessarily have to move for that. And, you know, like the team he's integral to that team, whereas actually if he goes to Manchester United with their young attacking front 3, front 4, he may well get siphoned out after a couple of years anyway. So for me, stick with the project, stick with Nuno, and you may well reach the Champions League in just as much time as you will at Manchester United.
Stick with the project, says
Sounds great,
Anton.
doesn't it?
Yeah, Keith, you disagree though?
Yeah. I mean, I think he could go in and can make a real name for himself at Manchester United. I mean, you've looked at their front line this season. So much pressure on Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial. At times, I would say maybe playing out of position through the middle. I'd really like to see them as a neutral playing off, either side of someone like Jimenez. And I just think there's an opening there for someone to go in and really sort of be the future of Manchester United. And he's obviously got the experience of playing in the Premier League. So, yeah, I mean, if I was him and it was Manchester United, I think, there's a real opportunity here. Whether that be the case for other teams, I don't know. But certainly Manchester United, they need a number 9 to come in now. And I think I don't know whether he's going to be good enough or not, but I certainly think it would be an opening if for him if he had that option.
I think his stats this season are fantastic as well. 35 games, 17 goals. That is special, and that is Manchester United special.
Yeah. Let's not forget what team we're talking about as well here. We're talking about Manchester United. Yes, it's not a great season. I know, I fully understand, but we're still talking about one of the biggest clubs in the world, and they are. And look, he's 28 as well. So if there is a move left, this is the last big move he can have. It didn't work out from Atletico Madrid. A bit better at Benfica. Done well at Wolves, but you're talking about Man United. Imagine him in the centre with Martial and Rashford either side. A perfect number 9. That's what they're lacking, really, a number 9.
Struggle to break down another club. Great.
Wolves fans, Manchester United fans, let us know who you agree with. Should he stay? Should he go? Mark, I want you to pop your board down. Everyone else, pop your boards up. Turn them to go. Face Mark.
Get out.
Get out here, Mark.
It's time
Go home.
for you. Take the hint. Wander over to the Sky Pad. We don't actually want you to go. Just meander over to the Sky Pad. Please come back, though. Not because we want you to go, because we want you to talk to us about one club in particularly. Tell us who it is a big January for.
I'm going to go to the Championship, and I love the Championship this season. Could it be the season that Brentford hit the big time and celebrate their new stadium opening in August? Could it be, though, for Premier League football? What a dream scenario that would be. With all that in mind, it means this window could be pivotal on how they end the season. So far in January, they've signed Halil Dervisoglu, the only player to arrive in this window from Sparta Rotterdam. But the club are actively working to sign another striker. Brentford feel they have roughly an 80% chance of finishing in the top 6 with the squad they have, but they want to try and push that towards 90% with a new addition up front. They have been exploring Emre Mor, who was once tipped for stardom whilst with Borussia Dortmund. His career stalled at Celta Vigo due to questions over his attitude, but he is one player currently on Brentford's radar, as is Charlton striker Lyle Taylor, who we've been reporting about. As things stand, we've been told Brentford's BMW is not for sale. And when I say BMW, it's not a car, it's their strike force of Benrahma and Bueno and Watkins, a total of 34 league goals and 14 assists between them. Whilst historically the club have been open to selling their best players, we understand this is a window where they are closed for business. Brentford are currently enjoying their best run of the season with 6 wins from 8 games in all competitions, which has made Thomas Frank very wary of upsetting the balance of the squad with any additions during this window. It's going to be an interesting January. Remember, Brentford fans, get in touch. We want to know what you think. Who would you like to sign, if anyone? It's the hashtag transfer talk, because the Championship is getting very interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And interesting stuff there, Mark, as well, because it actually does seem like a little bit of a change in tact for Brentford. Historically, they seem to have a little bit of a policy of not being afraid to actually let players go, because they were always quite confident that they were able to replace them, Addy.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in the summer, obviously, Neil Maupay went, obviously big money as well. Ezri Konsa went, so they made some good money in the summer, and that's what we used to see in Brentford do. They can't do this in January. They've almost got to say, close the doors, bury down the hatches and say, you know, we're not selling any of our players. Because if they don't sell any of their players, I think they've got a good enough squad to come up. Yeah, they're third currently in the Championship. It's going to be tight. Like, the Championship's always tight between sort of 1 or 10 teams. But I think they're definitely in that mix to, if not get automatic qualification, at least maybe fight for the playoff teams.
It's amazing how well they've done since Maupay's gone, haven't they? Other people have just stepped up to the plate and done really well. But that can't keep happening. I just don't think, you know, they'll struggle if that happens again. There will come a time when that's not going to work.
That's quite interesting why you say that, because actually they believe that they can always replace the players they sell, and that's what's quite unique about Brentford and the way the club is run. A lot of it is based on statistics and analysis and algorithms.
What was that 90% one again? What was that 90%?
We need some more on this, Mark.
What they do now, please don't go into the technical details of this because I'm just the messenger, but it's quite fascinating the way Brentford operate. They have an algorithm computer that predicts where they are likely to finish in January and at the end of the season. At the moment, they believe they have an 80% chance of getting promoted. But if they sign the right striker, that can go up to 90%. And that's how they do a lot of their recruitment, that's how they do a lot of their scouting. They put the information into a system, into a scouting database, and it will chuck up who they think is the best player to sign for what they currently want. If it's someone that's better on the left-hand side, it's someone that scores more goals. If it's someone that's better in the air, if it's someone that has an 80% plus creation rate, whatever it is, it's all done on analysis and statistics, and that's quite an interesting little conversation I had up at the Skypad there about what potentially they feel they're in at the moment and what could happen this season. Hence why, as Addy says, the doors are shut. They do not want to sell anyone. They want to keep everyone in the building and make one addition, which we understand to be a striker.
Yeah, I was going to say, so what is the current percentage?
80%.
Okay, and the new striker comes in, what percentage?
I know where this is going, 90%.
And what if he gets injured?
They've still got BMW.
Very good.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, we're getting our calculators out. Anton, you did get a little bit of an insight as to the vision that Brentford sold to potential players at the start of the season.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spoke to Pontus Jansson at the beginning of the season, and he was very much adamant, look, yes, they signed some really, really good players, and it's all very well people kind of stereotypically, it's little Brentford, or they're doing things differently. He's like, no, actually, you go first day of training, this team is excellent. This team will go places. They really believe in the coach as well. And they've sold them on a vision, not guaranteed success, but again, to be part of a project. And it makes people feel so wanted, not just to know that they'll be there in a season, but in your development, in 1 year time, we'll be here. In 2 years' time, you should be here. And like you said, stats will back that up as well. But yeah, it's a nice way of massaging a player's ego, but also it gives them something to aim for. There's tangible aims for each player at that football club.
And also, Brentford are a great club to deal with. The fans are fantastic. There's a real community spirit. The manager, Thomas Frank, there, every time I've interviewed him, every time I've spent time with him, he's been superb to deal with. And you love a fairy tale in football, and you just get the feeling, new season in August, a new stadium in August, could this be the fairy tale where they open their brand new stadium with Premier League football?
Just down the road.
Just down the road.
Well,
yeah.
They've got an 80% chance.
And 90% if they bring in that striker, yeah. Right, we're going to move on just to bring you a line here from Reading Women. They've actually announced that Farah Williams has added an additional year to her contract, keeping her with the club until June 2021. Anton, she's 35 years old, a player with plenty of experience.
Don't worry about the age.
How key is she to this side?
She's vital. Reading got up to 4th in the WSL this season, and I think it's fair to say they're doing better than a lot of people predicted. And Farah Williams is on the standby list for the World Cup in the summer. I mean, this is how she's not retired. She's England's most capped player of all time, 172 caps. That's absolutely staggering. Yeah, exactly. Just think about that. This is a player and her career's going through a renaissance. She's vital to what Reading do, and for her to basically sign up for another 2 years, I think just shows how well she's playing and how she's adapted her game over the last couple of seasons to continue on. She's a fantastic, not just a servant, always that cliche that comes out. She's still a fantastic player, and she's showing it in the WSL every week at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. 35 years old. I don't want to give my age away, but it's making me feel that I should be out there on the pitch still, because she's exactly the same age as me, and it makes me feel really bad actually, because she's doing so well.
But we're really happy for her. But we're really happy for her.
We are. No, it's fantastic. It really is. Absolutely. Fantastic.
Did you notice how the guys all kept quiet there about their ages? Everyone looked down like...
Right, let's move on. Don't forget, you can download the latest episode of the Transfer Talk podcast. It's available for you on iTunes, on Spreaker, as well as on the Sky Sports website. We've still got lots to talk about. We're going to be looking at the teams at the bottom of the Premier League next. Do they turn to new signings or stick with what they've got? We'll be discussing that next. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Let's head straight over to Anton now and the state of play.
Yeah, here's what's going on elsewhere. And Leicester's interest in Merid Deramal has ended after the Juventus defender suffered an ACL injury this weekend. And staying with Leicester, and George Thomas is close to signing for Ardo Den Haag on loan for the rest of the season. The deal is expected to be completed later today. Now, Sporting Lisbon boss Silas has admitted he cannot guarantee Bruno Fernandes will be available to face Benfica next week. That's after links to Manchester United. Watford will they're in talks to sign Udinese forward Ignacio Pacetto on a permanent deal, while LA Galaxy are in talks to sign striker Javier Hernandez. The MLS club has agreed a fee of around £7 million with Sevilla for the 31-year-old. And finally, as we said just before the break, England's most capped player of all time, Farah Williams, has signed a contract extension at Reading until 2021.
Right, we're going to switch our attention now to the clubs who could be in a little bit of relegation trouble. We'll focus shortly with the team on what that means potentially for them in this January transfer window. But first of all, we're going to have a little look at their current form. We'll start with Burnley, who are in 15th. They're 3 points above the bottom three, but it's fair to say their form has taken a bit of a dive with that 3-0 defeat at Chelsea, their 4th in a row in the Premier League. Moving on to West Ham, they're just a point above the relegation zone. It's 1 win in 4 in the league for them. In contrast, though, Watford in 17th, a great turnaround for them under Nigel Pearson. They've actually managed to climb their way out of that bottom 3. They have won their last 3. It's actually just 1 defeat in their last 6 for Watford, so things looking a lot better for them. Into the bottom 3, though, Aston Villa, and that 6-1 defeat to Manchester City. Seen them drop into the relegation zone. They are a point from safety and have been pretty inconsistent. It's 2 wins and 3 defeats in their last 5 in the league. What about Eddie Howe's Bournemouth, sitting down there in 19th, 2 points from safety, also in a bit of trouble. It is no win in their last 5, leaving them 2 points adrift. And then Norwich, down there, bottom of the Premier League, looking pretty bleak, 8 points from safety now. Defeat to Manchester United at the weekend, that saw them without a win in their last 9 Premier League matches. So yeah, not looking too good for them. The question is now, how does that form and their position in the table affect what they might end up doing in this transfer window? And Anton, we'll start at the top of that bottom of the table at number 15 in Burnley. What do they need to do to turn things around?
I think it's really interesting because I think at Burnley they've had, and rather admirably, they've had an attitude which is if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And at the moment, they've lost 6 of the last 8 games, so something is a little bit broken, I think, at Burnley. They're struggling and then creatively, and I think that's what they need, a bit of pace, a bit of creativity. I mean, I don't think the plan this season was necessarily for Aaron to start too many games, and he started at the weekend. I think they just need an injection of just something different, and it's really difficult because that's quite vague. But, you know, the way they play, maybe some pace on the wing, or maybe just a little, you know, someone to play in a number 10, or someone just add a slightly different option in centre midfield. But obviously, Burnley have a certain way of doing things, and they'll look around the UK as opposed to looking too far abroad for most of their players. So it'll be interesting to see whether they change anything in January, or whether they just see out the season, or and maybe look to do that in the summer.
Yeah, let's move on to West Ham, Addy. And actually, a lot of people at the start of the season were backing West Ham to be this kind of surprise package, that they actually might be competing, up the table, just a point above the bottom 3, though. Where do they need to look?
You're right, Joe. A lot of people at the start of the season were saying Europa League. Some people were even saying competition for Champions League, maybe where Wolves are, or even where Leicester are. So it's a big surprise. Obviously, that's the reason Pellegrini lost his job. David Moyes has come in. Look, they need an attacker badly. I think Sebastian Haller is actually a good player, but they haven't got nothing to support him with. You see him jump for headers, and he goes and runs and gets his own headers. So they need someone to kind of support him. We know they went in for Gedson Fernandes. They thought they had that deal over the line. Those West Ham fans celebrating, already buying West Ham shirts with Fernandes on the back. They need to get refunds for those. Marion Fellaini as well, they've looked at him. I don't know if that's an option, possibly that experience, maybe a body in the midfield, someone that can go and support Sebastian Haller up front. So they definitely need a midfielder and a striker. And I guess David Moyes has probably been promised some money, hence why the Fernandes deal was on the table. And let's hope they can maybe get something in the transfer window. But they haven't really been linked with anyone apart from Fernandes and Fellaini. So I guess West Ham fans will be hoping they can get some deals done across the line.
Yeah, West Ham fans, let us know what you think. We're going to skip over Watford. We'll focus on them on another show because it seems like they have turned a bit of a corner, so perhaps not as worried as some of these other clubs. So Aston Villa, Keith, I think inconsistent is probably the best word to describe their form at the moment. A bit up and down. And I think yesterday they just looked like they needed a goal scorer.
It's just I think it's the manner of the defeat to Man City. I mean, anyone can get beat 6-1 off Manchester City, but I think it's the way that the heads dropped towards the end, and that must be really concerning for Dean Smith right now. But when you actually looked at their lineup for the match, they still look relatively strong, but the glaring gap was up front. Since Wesley got injured against Burnley, out until the end of the season, they don't have anything else. Jonathan Kodja obviously is out of favour, just come back from injury. Even if he does get back, you get the impression he might not be used. He might even be loaned out. I think there's interest from the Championship, Nottingham Forest there. And then there's a youngster, Kieran Davis, who hasn't started yet in the Premier League. So there was so much on Wesley to be the man for the rest of the season. He's now gone. Anwar El Ghazi up front, playing makeshift striker against Man City. It was never going to work out. They're desperate for probably two strikers. We've touched on that with Newcastle earlier. How difficult is that to buy strikers, and good ones at that, in this window? And when you look at the money Villa have spent in the summer, over £100 million, we reckon, and they're down near the bottom. It has all the hallmarks of sort of what happened to Fulham last season. And just watching them yesterday, it looked as though they kind of felt sorry for themselves a little bit. They're going to have to snap out of that soon if they're going to turn things around.
Don't use the F word. That's never good. No team around that area wants to be compared to what Fulham did last season. And Villa tried hard to do it in a different way to develop their squad, not just kind of pick out players and that kind of thing. So it's really difficult. But I do think that. I've got people laughing at me because you said that, but I do think it's difficult because they probably spent a lot on wages on Drinkwater and Reina as well. It's interesting to know how much of their budget's been depleted by those deals.
I mean, good to get Reina in. You know, that'll be pleasing for the supporters, but I really felt a little bit for Danny Drinkwater yesterday. He's just not played any football this season. I think we were talking yesterday, weren't we? His last 3 starts have all been against Man City. Thrown in again without any game time under his belt and really struggled. But that kind of shows how desperate it's got for them. They're having to bring players in and throw them in from the start.
And it's quite interesting as well. This is the huge dilemma that every single club in the bottom 6 of the Premier League has. Do I sign a striker right now who's going to keep me in the Premier League, or do I sign a striker who's going to get me out of the Championship? What do you do? Because the finances...
It's too early, though, to be thinking.
I think you have to be sensible.
Yeah.
I think you have to think, right...
Villa don't even want to be thinking of that Championship.
Of course, on the field, you think about staying in the Premier League, but as a business, you have to think, right, do I chuck 60, 70, 80,000 pound a week at a striker in the Premier League, or do I get someone who's young and hungry who might do it in the Premier League, but I know can definitely do it in the Championship? And that's the dilemma.
Sorry, Keith, are you shocked that none of them came in for Ryan Brewster? That they let him go down to the Championship? I know not much Premier League experience, if any, really, with Liverpool. But
I think Liverpool picked that deal by all accounts. I think Liverpool wanted him to go to Swansea because they felt he would play.
Steve Cooper, his manager of England.
I think it would probably be a big ask for him to go into a team struggling with relegation, and that kind of thing can affect a young player as well. They need an experienced head in there, don't they? At least one.
Yeah. OK, what about Bournemouth? 19th, no win in their last 5. Mark, they need to do something to help their cause in terms of strengthening.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think many people know what that something is. That's the $1 million question, and that's what Eddie Howe's probably sat in his office today looking at the result from the weekend, looking at the performance, looking at the players he's got at his disposal, and trying to work out a master plan how to avoid the greatest escape. You have to remember Eddie Howe was responsible for one of the greatest escapes in football when Bournemouth were minus 17 in League Two, and then they still survived on the penultimate game of the season. So it's not unfamiliar territory for the Bournemouth boss. It is unfamiliar when it comes to being in the Premier League. In terms of this January transfer window, what are they going to do? Because it's my understanding there aren't huge funds available. Obviously, they have been crippled by injuries. Eddie has said publicly they're looking at potential loan deals. Obviously, they do have Harry Wilson in on loan at the moment, so they could add to the squad with one additional loan. They are working hard. He has said that they will be monitoring the market right to the very end of the window. Nothing seems imminent at the moment, but they definitely need a fresh face into that side.
Thereabouts. Well, because there's so many holes in that. You watch the game on Sunday, and there's plenty of positions where you think, well, they could do with a centre midfielder. Certainly, they could maybe do with another centre back. They could. Where do you think the priority will be?
I think the priority will certainly be to find someone who can either score goals or create goals. I think that's been the sort of it's not been characteristic of Bournemouth over the course of the last few years. They've always scored goals. We might let in 4, but we'll score 5, and we look great going forward. At the moment, they don't look like that.
Ryan Fraser, Harry Wilson, Callum Wilson. I mean, Dominic Solanke.
Yeah, I know he's not scoring, but you look, they've still got players who have delivered in the last couple of years, haven't they? It's just too many players out of form at the moment.
That's it. Players out of form, and the other big thing is keeping hold of players as well. They do not want to let anyone go. Nathan Ake, Ryan Fraser, the 2 names that have been linked with potential moves away. They need to keep them in the building.
Played Nathan Ake left back.
Yeah.
And you feel that's your best centre-back, your best player probably, and you're playing him out of position. It's just, I don't know, I saw the press conference, post-match press conference with Eddie Howe, and he doesn't look like there's an idea there of how to fix this. And a guy that doesn't look like he wants to be there long-term either.
I'll just counteract that. Eddie Howe has been in all these difficult situations, and he's always come up with a solution. Whether it's in League One, League Two, the Championship, Premier League, you know, I have to remember Bournemouth are essentially a League One club operating at the highest level. You know, they have massively overachieved. They've played some of the best football the fans have ever seen in 120 odd years of history. And every time there's been a dark moment, Eddie's found a way. And I think the fans just need to get behind the players and believe that this man, the most heroic manager the club has ever had in their history, will find a way.
What about Norwich? Do you think they can find a way if things not looking too good for them? And fair to say Timo Pukki probably needs a little bit of help. Yeah,
we said it on the show last week that one of their key targets in January was a number 10. This week they confirmed the signing of Andre Duda. He's an attacking midfielder. He's technically very good. He's great with an end product. And most significantly for Norwich is he not only assists, but he scores goals. And when you look at the whole of Norwich's season, they've only had one goal from a player that has played in the number 10 role during this season. That was Kenny McLean against Manchester City. So they identified that as being a key responsibility in terms of signing someone this January, and they've gone out and got their man Duda. So that's going to be, you know, and he's going to have an impact. He's a good player. And you know Norwich are very calm and measured when they do their business. Stuart Webber, the sporting director, has a really good philosophy. They've done a superb so far with what they've actually spent. And they've played some great football. They've had great wins against Manchester City and Everton. We know they're looking for another striker and potentially an attacking midfielder as well to go out wide.
Why not defenders? I'm really confused. I don't get it. They've been relying on their young defenders all season. And, you know, you saw Man United just tear them apart. United have struggled to break teams down. It took them a little while, but then they just ripped through them. I get it. I get that they do need, but, you know, they need to score more goals. They also need to stop conceding, obviously.
Yeah, I think they're better at dusting themselves down and getting on with it. We've seen Newcastle do that. If they take a hammer and they come back the next week and do fairly well, I think we've seen that with Norwich. I think although they're at the bottom, I think they're feeling less sorry for themselves right now than perhaps a Bournemouth or an Aston Villa, and I think that's what they've got in their favour. Whether that can mean they can turn things around, I'm not so sure. But at least they're giving it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to talk about. Get in touch. #TransferTalk on Twitter. Ashley Hopkins is praying to see some West Ham transfers today, so we will see if we can make that happen for you. Stay with us, though. Plenty still to come. We'll have much more on Manchester United, Chelsea and Arsenal. And as I said, keep those tweets coming in. We will go through as many of them as we can before the end of the show. #TransferTalk. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Let's just bring you the very latest on Bournemouth goalkeeper Asmir Begovic. He has completed his medical in Italy ahead of a loan move to AC Milan. The two clubs, of course, had previously agreed a deal. He does have 18 months remaining on his Bournemouth contract, but we now know that the Bournemouth keeper Begovic has completed his medical in Italy ahead of that loan move to AC Milan. As soon as it is confirmed, we will bring you that right here on Sky Sports News. Right, let's turn our attention to Manchester United. Bruno Fernandes looking likely to join. Manchester United fans really wanting this one to happen. If you just look on our Twitter feed, so many United fans getting in touch saying with Bruno Fernandes in behind Rashford, Martial and Greenwood, a top four push would be realistic. Steve's saying Man United must buy two players in this window. Come on Bruno, announce already. And Calvin saying Man United really need to get the Fernandes deal across the line. We could also benefit with a striker and maybe a new fullback. So I think it is fair to say that United want to see this one happening. And Anton, United, they do need to strengthen in midfield.
Oh, most definitely. I think the injuries to Paul Pogba and Scott McTominay as well show that. I think they needed more of a creative-minded midfielder anyway, regardless. But Bruno Fernandes is interesting because, unlike in the summer, Sporting are willing to do business now, effectively. In the summer, Bruno Fernandes had a very complicated contract situation, which had a very odd release clause, which meant the club had to pay him back some money at various points if bids were rejected. Now that's all been sorted. He signed a new contract. Sporting want the money, and they want around £60 million for him. The thing is, we know United have been watching him, they've been tracking him, but they haven't actually made a move for him. Now, whether that suggests he's not necessarily a target or that's for United. So I think United fans know that's the hole they need. They need more creativity from their centre and midfield. But at the moment, he isn't the guy that Manchester United are pursuing at this moment in time. Now, that may well change. But it's fascinating that Sporting are willing to do a deal. That's the game changer here, because United may well go, right, we can cut the deal we want and we can do it on our terms.
Could there be a potential that other Premier League clubs may come in for him? Because at the moment we're linking him to United, but why wouldn't
his name
other
is
teams?
Fernandes, so yeah, there'll probably be a few after him.
Yeah, Gedson, Bruno, we're going to have to be careful with that. Van de Beek.
Yeah.
Another player that we've spoken about a lot, actually, linked with a number of clubs. I know another player that fans would love to see at Old Trafford. It seems the player, though, has other ideas, Addy.
Yeah, and I think it's probably either or as well. You kind of feel like it's Bruno Fernandes or Van de Beek. Fantastic player, obviously part of that brilliant Ajax side last year that went to the semi-finals of the Champions League. Very close to getting to the finals. A lot of their players have already gone as well, so they want to keep him. The bad thing for United fans and Real Madrid fans, obviously interested in him as well, is that he said he's going nowhere until the end of the season, and he also said it might be the next season he stays at Ajax as well. So, look, fantastic player, 9 goals, 10 assists last season, 16 matches so far this season, 6 goals, 4 assists. So, again, it kind of fits that mould of a creative player that can score that United are begging for and crying out, especially with the Pogba situation.
Yeah.
No one knows what's going on with him, so not for now, but maybe something then look at.
Van de Beek's interesting because he had his fingers burnt in the summer as well, because Real Madrid had agreed a fee with Ajax. He thought he was pretty much going, and then they basically kept him on the back burner, and they're doing that now. Now, Real Madrid aren't going to sign any senior players this January. They've already pretty much told us that. But he is still a target if they don't get Paul Pogba, just like in the summer. So Van de Beek's not going to come out and say, yeah, I'm going to leave, and then sort of think, actually, I've got nowhere to go to, or I have to go to Manchester United because he'd rather go to Real Madrid. Yeah. So that's the situation Manchester United are in. These kind of top players, necessarily they aren't the first choice for some players. So it's going to be interesting because you're right, I can't see him going now, and I can't see him necessarily going to Manchester United unless there are no other options.
Yeah, we always talk about potential targets. Obviously, it is the transfer window, but something that is also really important for clubs is keeping hold of players. It's also offloading players, and I guess that is part of Manchester United's dilemma this January as well, in terms of who do they keep hold of, who do they offload. The Paul Pogba saga looks like it's going to rumble on again. I don't know how many times we spoke about him in the summer and he ended up staying. How important is it that United do find a resolution to this one and do it quickly?
He's got 18 months left on his contract. It's vital. You very rarely get a senior player enter that stage of his career, enter that stage of his contract without the club either selling or, just doing all they can to make him re-sign. I don't know about you, but I haven't heard anything about Paul Pogba being in contract talks with Manchester United. Not them trying to make counter offers to make him stay. So they've got a real decision obviously, look, they've effectively got a 5-month trial here with Paul Pogba, haven't they? Because he's not going in January, and he needs to get his form and his fitness back. Yeah. So if he impresses, the resolution may well be he leaves for a lot of money in January.
And it's key that they get it done because they don't want it to become a sideshow, as it often has done in the past, because he's such a high-profile player, he's a talisman, he's got so much quality, he's a World Cup winner, but it doesn't need to become the Paul Pogba show. It needs to be about Manchester United, and they have to get it sorted, like you say, quickly. Yeah,
well, another player whose future is still uncertain is Olivier Giroud. Looking likely he's going to go to Inter Milan. Addy, bring us up to speed on this one.
Yes, obviously, this is still one that's rumbling on, right? Linked with so many teams, Newcastle, possibly Aston Villa, but it's likely that his destination will be Inter Milan. He hasn't featured for Chelsea since November and hasn't been part of their Premier League squad for the last 7 games. So he's definitely going somewhere, and doesn't look like Inter Milan is that place he's going to go. They've supposedly, and I say supposedly, they offered him a 2.5-year contract for a 33-year-old. That's massive, and you can understand why he wants to go. He needs to get into a team and start playing in order to get into that Euros for France as well, which is a big thing for him. There's a slight problem between what Chelsea value him at and what Inter Milan wants to pay. And there's supposed to be a difference of 1.17 million euros. So, I mean, they're not far off each other, so I'm sure a deal will be done. So expect to see Olivier Giroud at Inter Milan before the end of the transfer window.
It's surprising that another Premier League team hasn't come in and is the front runner for this one, because will he be a bit of a miss to the Premier League?
I mean, I think these clubs, the likes of Newcastle or Villa, I'm not too sure on Villa, but I think they were looking more for loan deals, you know, where this is obviously a permanent one for Giroud, one last payday. You would think he would want to stay. Perhaps maybe Milan is a little bit more attractive to his wife, who obviously, remember, she wouldn't leave London that time. Is that right? Or did I make that up? Put it this way, I just don't think she'd be going to Newcastle anyway.
What Keith says goes.
Right, that is it. That's all we've got time for on Transfer Talk this afternoon. My thanks to Keith, to Mark, to Addy and to Anton. Enjoyed your company this morning. Loads and loads to talk about. And thank you guys at home for getting in touch as well. Remember, Good Morning Transfers, it returns once again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Join me and the team then. And if that's not enough for you, Transfer Talk returns tomorrow. That is from midday. And Arma Chef and Kavi Solokol return with the Transfer Show. That continues at 7 o'clock tonight. And coming up next on Sky Sports News, Jose Mourinho could be on the verge of making Gedson Fernandes his first signing. We will be hearing from the Tottenham head coach live very soon indeed.